Welcome to another episode of Business Yoga Podcast. Today's topic is Introduction to Business Yoga, what it truly means, why it matters, and how it can transform the way we lead and work.
All right, let's get into an area we rarely touch, the intersection of ancient personal philosophy and modern corporate structure. We're asking a pretty big question today. Can the profound wisdom of yoga really offer a path to creating balanced, conscious, and, well, ultimately successful organizations?
It's a fascinating question. We're looking at a complete framework that calls itself business yoga. And this philosophy is designed specifically to bridge what has really become a chasm between traditional corporate goals.
That relentless pursuit of profit.
Exactly. And the deeper human need for fulfillment and, sustainable practice.
And the central tension is right there. I mean, traditional business is great at improving the standard of living.
Of course.
Better goods, faster tech, economic growth, and that's essential. It absolutely drives progress.
But this philosophy, it pivots the focus.
Yeah.
It moves entirely toward the standard of life. If you look at the core of yoga, it's all about cultivating trust, discipline, clarity, fulfillment in the individual, yes. So business yoga proposes applying these exact same principles to the corporate world. The aim is to weave these foundational yogic concepts right into the company's DNA.
That seems like a huge conceptual leap for a typical business leader. The foundational premise of this work is compelling, though. It says business is necessary, but the sheer velocity and that singular focus on financial success,
Right.
it causes organizations to fundamentally lose sight of the deeper fulfilling objectives that motivate people and that ensure long-term sustainability.
They become machines, not organisms.
Exactly.
When we talk about business yoga, we're really talking about structure. It uses a core analogy. A business, much like a person, is seen as having a body.
So operations, tangible assets, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Precisely. In a mind strategy, data, planning, and a consciousness.
The purpose, the values, the culture.
Yes. And the entire goal of this philosophy is to integrate harmony, mindfulness, and intentionality into that whole complex structure.
Okay, let's unpack this. If you accept that analogy, then success itself has to be redefined. The authors argue it just can't mean maximizing quarterly returns.
No. It has to be sustainable, meaningful, and genuinely enriching for all parties involved.
Not just the C-suite or the shareholders.
Not at all. This has to be a holistic approach. It addresses economic thriving, which is the material side, but it equally prioritizes the emotional side.
Nurturing well-being and purpose.
Right. If your company is financially solvent, but your people are completely burned out and purposeless, this framework would say you have not succeeded.
That's where the real challenge comes in, though. How do you measure enriching for all? When you look at typical corporate metrics, they are almost exclusively quantitative. Does this framework offer specific measurements for, say, employee purpose alongside profit margins?
Well, it shifts the focus. It's about internal alignment first, before you get to the external measurement. The philosophy suggests that once that internal alignment of purpose and culture is achieved, then the external metrics, they naturally follow in a sustainable way. They define success less as a target and more as a state of being, conscious operation.
It's always helpful to know where philosophy this ambitious came from. The genesis story for this framework is actually pretty interesting. The inspiration came from a place called Kariwala Industries. Apparently, visitors repeatedly commented on one specific thing they noticed.
The sheer happiness of their employees.
Exactly. It wasn't just low turnover. There was this observable cultural joy that made people ask, how are you doing this?
And that observable happiness, it wasn't a coincidence or some kind of perk. The authors realized it was the direct result of applying a long-time personal yoga practice, but applying it rigorously to the professional environment. And it's so important to clarify, business yoga is not a wellness program about doing stretches at lunch.
Right, it's not about physical postures.
Yeah. No. It's about applying the essential qualities of the practice, discipline, balance, clarity, purpose, directly to strategic planning, to operational decisions, and leadership conduct.
I can see why that would stick. It grounds the whole philosophy in something observable, in real-world results, that happiness factor, instead of just abstract theory.
It does, and the authors, they recognize the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
How do you introduce these ancient, Sanskrit-rooted concepts to a busy, modern CEO who needs immediate practical guidance Their method is just brilliant in its simplicity. They translate those complex terms into simple, relatable organizational functions.
Which makes the whole thing accessible and immediately applicable. It moves way beyond just abstract principles. This translational approach is where it gets really interesting because it allows them to map specific yogic concepts onto the organization itself. And this gets us right into the practical transformation part of all this.
This is truly the implementation step. The framework offers 3 core frameworks for organizational structure and leadership. First, they define what they call organizational chakras. Now, for listeners who might not be familiar, the chakras are 7 energy centers in the body. This philosophy treats the company like a living, energetic system that requires alignment, and each chakra maps directly to a core corporate function.
Let's focus on that mapping because this is where the theory becomes something you can actually use. Can you give us a couple of clear examples of these organizational chakras? What are the parallels?
Certainly. Let's start at the base, the root chakra or Muladhara. In the body, this is all about security, grounding, survival. In a business, this is your foundational security,
Financial stability.
financial stability, operational resilience, the core HR infrastructure that keeps the company grounded and just running. If your root chakra is weak, your business is constantly unstable, maybe anxious about cash flow, or struggling with basic staffing.
That makes perfect sense. Stability equals survival. So, moving up the chain, what about purpose and mission? Where does that fit in?
That sits at the very top, the crown chakra, Sahasrara. This is the organization's vision, its higher purpose, and its connection to the greater world. If your crown chakra is misaligned, you might have a highly efficient company that's doing very well, but nobody remembers why they're doing it.
Profitable, but ultimately meaningless.
Exactly.
I never thought of linking a company's mission statement to the crown chakra. That's a really striking parallel. To give us one in the middle, what manages the culture and relationships?
That would be the heart chakra, Anahata. In a business, this governs internal trust, external partnerships, the corporate culture, and team collaboration. If this center is blocked, the organization becomes siloed, distrustful, and just unable to collaborate effectively across departments, no matter how good the strategy is. The framework insists that, just like a body, the company has to align all 7 of these centers for it to be healthy.
Okay, so once the structure is defined through the chakras, the framework then addresses the internal mechanics of how decisions are made within that structure. This is where they bring in Ida and Pingala.
That's right. Ida and Pingala are often described as the lunar and solar energy channels.
Cool and intuitive versus hot and logical.
Yes, the channels that govern balance in the body. When you apply it to an organization, it addresses a very common C-suite conflict, that tension between logic and intuition.
Let's break that down with a business metaphor. What kind of roles or functions would best represent Ida and Pingala in a company?
Where you'd see Pingala, the solar, logical side, as the CFO, the operations head, or maybe the data analytics department.
Anything measurable, quantitative, focused on hard execution.
Exactly. Then Ida, the lunar intuitive side, that's your R&D team, the creative director, or the long-range strategy group. It's focused on what could be rather than what currently is.
And the sources argue that we need both, but corporate culture tends to over-prioritize Pingala, the measurable, logical data.
Absolutely. The application here is to guide balanced decision-making. Imagine a product launch. Pingala demands to see the spreadsheets, the market data, the precise ROI. Ida asks, does this product truly serve our purpose? Does it feel right? Does the market need this, even if the data doesn't currently prove it? Unquote. A successful business yogi leader integrates both. They make sure intuition and clear logic work together so one doesn't suppress the other.
But doesn't prioritizing intuition and deep purpose sometimes sound a bit soft to the board, especially when quarterly profits are on the line? How does this philosophy reconcile non-attachment, which is a core yogic idea, with shareholder obligations?
That's a crucial question. The authors aren't suggesting non-attachment to results. They're suggesting non-attachment to only one kind of result, namely short-term profit. They propose that by committing to processes that are transparent and ethically grounded, the long-term sustainable results, the ones investors truly want, are achieved without that frantic chase for quick fixes. And this commitment to process is where the third framework comes in.
Ah, the internal operating system for the leader. So we move from structure, the chakras, and process, Ida and Pingala, to the leader's own foundation, which is found in Ashtanga Yoga's 8 limbs.
Exactly. If the organization is going to be conscious, the consciousness of its leaders has to be aligned first. The 8 limbs are traditionally an ethical and moral guide for personal conduct. The philosophy leverages the first two limbs, the yamas or restraints, and the niyamas, observances, as critical components for effective leadership.
Can you give us a taste of how the ethical restraints of the yamas translate directly into corporate policy?
Sure. Take satya, which means truthfulness. In the boardroom, this translates to radical transparency, honest reporting, and ethical communication, even when the news is bad. Or ahimsa, nonviolence. In business, that means avoiding practices that harm the environment, exploit labor, or damage the mental well-being of your employees. It turns personal ethics into corporate responsibility.
That sounds intensely personal, though. How does the philosophy make sure that an ethical commitment from the eight limbs translates into consistent corporate policy, and not just, good intentions from a CEO who happens to meditate?
It connects the personal discipline of the niyamas like tapas, or discipline effort, to the actual execution of corporate strategy. The philosophy states that you can't expect the organization to practice disciplined ethical conduct if the leadership lacks the personal commitment and self-study, svadhyaya, to sustain it. The eight limbs provide a structured ethical template that reinforces all the other frameworks.
So if a leader is aligned, the company structure is aligned through the chakras, and decision-making is balanced with Ida and Pingala, this should fundamentally resolve the most persistent corporate problem there is, work-life balance.
Precisely. The framework argues that work-life balance is a flawed concept to begin with.
Because it frames work and life as opposing forces you have to wrestle.
Exactly. This philosophy advocates for work-life integration.
And integration means moving beyond just a corporate slogan about flexible hours. What does that actually look like in a truly aligned organization?
It means creating work settings that inherently nurture well-being and purpose. The authors suggest that if the company's crown chakra, its purpose, is clear, then the work itself becomes a source of fulfillment. It's not just an activity you tolerate to fund your real life. The integration is achieved when the values you cultivate on the yoga mat, clarity, discipline, presence, are the exact same values you apply at your desk.
So the ultimate goal is that the business thrives economically because it enriches the lives of its employees, not at their expense.
That's the lasting impact. It takes this idea of conscious commerce out of the realm of pure philosophy and plants it firmly into daily operations and leadership conduct.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Well, the core message is that business yoga offers more than just quick fixes or superficial changes. It seems to offer real clarity, concrete direction, and a genuine pathway for leaders who are seeking sustained growth alongside a deeper inner balance. It's positioned as a blueprint for building an organization that's designed for joy and purpose.
And that clarity and awareness lead directly to a significant outcome. When businesses operate with this kind of internal logic, the result is a conscious, joyful, and purposeful operation. And that leads to a truly lasting impact that extends far beyond just quarterly returns. It extends into the community and the culture the company serves.
And that lasting impact, it starts with a moment of self-reflection, which the authors highly encourage. So consider everything we've mapped out today: the foundational security of the root chakra, the balance needed between Ida's intuition and Pingala's logic in a big decision, or the ethical framework of the eight limbs applied to your team's conduct. Which one of those specific frameworks feels like the single most crucial point of misalignment or opportunity for growth in your own field of work right now? That realization is where the integration truly begins.